It's Tuesday here on The Story, and we're covering a lot of topics for you tonight. A seabird die-off from a decade ago is still stumping researchers. The lessons it could teach us in the future. Plus, a small step towards resolution in the largest healthcare workers' strike in Oregon history. But first, the city of Portland's camping ban. How many arrests have been made? And the biggest question, is it working? Well, that depends on who you ask. It's our big story tonight. For years, this Southeast Portland neighborhood has watched the city's homeless crisis grow.
I've been here 13 years, so I know, and it has never been this bad, you know?
Ruth lives next to a group of RVs that have been there for about a month, and she says it's dangerous.
It's really scary. This one man ran back on my place all bloodied and everything. Had a knife, he had a gun, you know?
Ruth's neighbors installed security cameras and orange cones to try and deter homeless people from parking or setting up tents.
How could you fix it? Can you really fix it? Will it ever be fixed?
In July, the city of Portland enacted a ban on camping on public property or public streets and sidewalks, only if there is a reasonable alternative shelter. That means anyone who refuses the offer of shelter multiple times could face up to a $100 fine, up to a week in jail, or both.
They're making it illegal to be homeless, it feels like.
Since the ban went into effect, 3 people have been arrested, according to Portland police records.
That hasn't done. I don't know if it's doing downtown, but around here, nothing's changed.
Oh my God, they know better than that, you know, because this is really crazy down here, and they know it is.
In July, we found the first man arrested for violating the ban.
This is why I used to stay here.
Turns out, the Multnomah County Sheriff, Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, refused to book him, and he was released.
I don't like being forced into something with no choice. There's a tiny home, you're going in it, and you can't do nothing about it, right? No, I can. I'll go the jail route.
The sheriff later released a statement saying she will only book people in jail who pose a genuine danger to the public, and that does not include people whose only offense is living unsheltered. Fast forward to this week, law enforcement's role in enforcing the ban continues to be limited.
I'm kind of surprised, honestly. Like, I haven't seen anybody around me dealing with law enforcement.
That's because Portland police officers only step in when city crews ask them to. And a spokesperson for Mayor Keith Wilson's office tells us the majority of people who have violated the ban accepted the offer of shelter. But that's not the case for Vanessa, who just moved under an overpass carrying I-205.
In some cases, moving once or twice a week, it seems like. So you're never really settled anyways.
Yeah, and during that process, are you getting offered any shelter or any services?
And all the times that they've moved in, I've been offered shelter or housing one time.
Did you accept it?
I tried to, but being trans, they offered me housing in a men's shelter, which I told them just honestly wasn't an option for me. They say it is. There's supposed to be a lot of housing available, but getting into it it's jumping through a lot of hoops.
Just take it from Andy.
After calling 311 multiple times a day.
Andy lives in a tent between these boulders, meant to stop people like her from setting up camp.
Me and my partner, we've been trying so hard, dude. So hard for like a year now. Okay, so lots of layers to all this. But first, let's talk about the first 3 arrests of people who violated the camping ban. We know about the first man, and I can tell you he is still on the streets because I saw him last week. As for the other 2 people, they were given a court date and they both showed up to their hearings. That's according to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. However, during those arraignments, there was no public defender available, so a motion was made to dismiss the cases. The state opposed that motion and a judge denied it. So both people were released back out onto the streets with another court date for next month. In the meantime, we would love to hear your thoughts on the ban and the enforcement or lack thereof so far. Just email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. Before we move on, I want to go back to Andy. She's that young homeless woman you saw at the end of the story there. So I'm not sure how she ended up on the streets, but she's 26 years old and desperately wants to get off the streets. And I'm not just saying that. I've covered homelessness in Portland for about 3 years now, and it's not often that you meet someone who is actively trying to get into housing or shelter as much as she is. Usually people are tied up in an addiction or a relationship, or they don't want to leave their pet or vehicle. There was always something or someone seemingly tying them to street life. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case with Andy. Here's some more of our interview with her today, where she talks about the lengths she's gone or will go to get indoors. Listen.
After calling 311 multiple times a day for like every day, and then finally they told me, oh, you already have an outreach person. And then I tried reaching out to him, and I have gotten no reply at all whatsoever since then. I tried calling their office where they stay at or where they work at, and I've even gotten no response there. I've tried flagging down officers 2 different times. I've seen them driving by, and I flagged them down asking them for a referral. I've gone to the fire department and knocked on their door. I've I don't want to do this anymore, but I've contemplated setting my own camp on fire, in hopes that they put me in one due to the emergency. I've tried getting it for medical reasons, any reasons that I've gone to the hospital or whatever. I've asked.
Sit here, do you think, in this spot for a few days?
So for the last 7 months, we've actually been right here under the bridge, or we've been across the street on private property, and we've only been jumping back and forth because we've told all the agencies and everything like that where we stay, and we don't want to move anywhere else in case they come to give us a tiny home or something.
That's smart. I will reach out and see what I can do.
Okay, so I reached out to the city's outreach team and told them about her. We'll see what happens. Today, Portland Mayor Keith Wilson announced that city managers and supervisors will be coming back to work in person full-time starting in April. And that's about 700 people. Those people will join the 3,500 others who were already working in person full-time. About 1,900 people will still be working a hybrid situation, and more than 500 will stay fully remote. Mayor Wilson says it's not about helping revitalize downtown, but if that happens to be the case, great.
It's not a decision that was based on downtown foot traffic. This is a decision that's based on camaraderie, collaboration. 60% of all of our Portland staff are either new or in new positions since the beginning of COVID. We have a new form of government. We have a new council. We have a new mayor. We have so many reasons to build relationships. That's what it's designed. If the byproduct is downtown foot traffic, is downtown vibrancy, you bet, because after we end unsheltered homelessness, you can bet our next vision for the following year is about revitalizing our community, which starts with having a vibrant urban core.
Now, just last week, Wilson backtracked on a plan to get all city workers back into the office 4 days a week, bowing to fierce union pressure and threats that city employees will simply find remote work elsewhere. The leader of one of the unions representing city workers says they like being remote, arguing it's good for morale and productivity. City workers have often been pointed at as a solution to revitalizing downtown by simply bringing more people here during the week. Because unlike other companies, the city of Portland can't just pack up and leave. But we know other companies are doing just that. Estimates from Greater Portland, Inc., an organization geared toward creating and expanding jobs in the Portland area, show that about 25% of downtown Portland offices are vacant. That's 1 in 4. Across the city, there's nearly 8 million square feet of office space just sitting there, and many of those workers are never coming back. The group's data shows before the pandemic, around 8% of Portlanders worked from home. In 2021, that number shot up to 27.5%, and it hasn't come down much since then. In 2023, about 21% of Portlanders were still working remotely. People who do go back to the office are finding themselves commuting to the suburbs, not downtown. Data presented by Greater Portland last week shows that 57% of companies surveyed by Portland State University last year moved their offices to the suburbs, mainly Tigard, Tualatin, Beaverton, Lake Oswego, and across the river to Vancouver. Many of the companies also rented less office space after they moved.
So of the companies that used to move to downsize, about 59% reduced their office space by 30% or more. So the move was not just a relocation decision for tax reasons or safety reasons, but also downsizing was an important aspect of the new office and the office move.
A PSU survey found that companies moved their businesses out of downtown because of the concerns that we've heard over and over: vandalism, employee safety, parking costs, and taxes. But researchers say the way companies use physical office space is also changing.
So companies have moved away from being this destination where you come and sit from 9 to 5 every day, but more a location where you come to collaborate with your colleagues, to interact, and you may or may not do silent work at the office. You can also do it at home. You can do it at a coffee shop. And this has a huge advantage for companies. Companies have a tremendous pressure to reduce their occupancy cost, whether that's from shareholders, whether that's because the expenses have been going up. And so by focusing more on collaborative space and having more employees in a small amount of space, companies can actually reduce their occupancy costs.
So even with companies moving to the suburbs, office vacancies went up across the board. Greater Portland looked at neighborhoods and suburbs around the city, and everybody saw a steep increase in vacancy from before the pandemic to after, though the smallest increase was in Vancouver. Their office vacancy rate only went up by 0.3%. So say you're someone looking for office space for yourself or your business, you'll certainly have your pick of locations. But what you might be surprised to learn is that you'll probably be paying about the same rate as you would have before the pandemic. Let's show you. The top line on this graph shows the asking rent for office space from 2018 to now. It actually went up a bit, from about $31 a square foot to $32. That bottom line there shows the increase in space available. So with prices staying the way they are, Greater Portland says landlords are having to offer more incentives to attract tenants.
They're seeing increased concessions from landlords for new tenants. So that might mean maybe more upfits that the landlord is providing, or a couple of free months of free rent. And those in reality are kind of reducing the rents and maybe attracting more businesses.
And we know the industries that cater to office workers have already been seeing the impact of fewer workers for years, especially in things like restaurants, bars, and hotels. And we're starting to see the impact on a bigger scale too. What's called Portland's market attractiveness has plummeted, which means fewer people are moving here and fewer businesses are opening up shop. Both the city of Portland and Multnomah County are dealing with budget shortfalls that they blame in large part due to reduced tax revenue. So where do we go from here? What do we do with all this space when most office workers just are not going to come back? Now, the obvious idea that many people have turned to is renovating offices into housing. But that has not taken off on a large scale, mostly because of cost. Those at Greater Portland say there could be opportunities for new kinds of businesses to use the space.
I think there are opportunities in some kind of lighter manufacturing areas that traditionally people might not think go into office space, but they often they're not really the typical manufacturers, and they could locate within the downtown. Additionally, there are opportunities, I think, for more creative businesses that are looking for maybe some of the larger spaces. Almost you could think of like a studio space that sometimes are traditionally in older buildings, but within some of these older historic office buildings, or even some of the more modern office buildings, are opportunities for creative businesses to locate there, set up design studios, more creative interactive space. And little by little, I think we're seeing some of that, and hopefully we'll see more of that.
So what do you think should be done with all the empty office space in Portland? Send us your ideas. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, coming up next on The Story, a step forward today in the ongoing healthcare strike at Providence hospitals across the state, what it means in the near future. Plus, we're sharing some of your feedback on our coverage and the strike itself. Some agreeing with those on the picket lines and some not. That's next when The Story returns.
Well, now to the very latest on Oregon's largest healthcare workers strike in state history. Today, Providence says they are ready to schedule negotiations with all 8 hospitals, including the 2 largest here in the metro, Providence Portland and Providence St. Vincent. So there's some movement towards resolution, but this is just the scheduling of talks between the 2 sides. But it's a step forward nonetheless. The union responded today claiming that the pressure from the strike is now working, that Providence is ready to talk. The Oregon Nurses Association claims that Providence is spending more than $25 million a week on replacement nurses. Interesting to note, though, that the strike has not been going for a week yet. It's just day 5. But it's just another example of the war of words between the 2 sides. The union says they will release information on the details in their proposals, quote, in the coming days. All right, now let's get to some of your thoughts following our coverage of the strike last night. We had a live interview with a rep from the Oregon Nurses Association to hear their side of this story after we previously heard from the chief executive of Providence on Friday. And we got a good mix of responses from you. Some in favor of the strike, some against, even some patients who find themselves caught in the middle of all this. Now let's start with those who agree with the healthcare workers on the picket lines. Dixie wrote to us, "I support the doctors and nurses. They are at ground zero and know what the patients really need. The administration of Providence care about the bottom line first, doctors and nurses second."
I am the wife of a patient who had surgery scheduled this week with Providence and canceled it because of the strike. I am always in favor of unions. Providence proves that it is a business, it's about making money, and it has nothing to do with health care because they're only interested in making money.
But there are certainly those of you out there who do not agree with the strike. An anonymous viewer wrote, "Nurses are spoiled. How can hospitals possibly keep healthcare costs down when unsustainably generous sick leave, vacation, and Family Medical Leave Act policies can be abused by staff with complete impunity? These abuses result in staff shortages, especially on Fridays and Mondays. Unions don't fight fair." And then there are the people who, one could argue, are the most affected by this strike, patients, and those needing to see their provider at one of the Providence locations. We got an interesting voicemail from a viewer named Rick about just that.
Your interview with the nurse from Providence about the strike and about some of the things that are going on at Providence, as a patient there, it really has got me concerned. Am I going to the right place for my health concerns? Well, I'll tell you, it really put me in a place to where I'm just wondering if I should go back to where I was at previous to this.
Rick, I'm just going to guess that you're not alone in wondering that. We've heard from a few people in our email inbox who are having trouble scheduling appointments because of the strike, delaying their care. But let's end on this nice email from a viewer named Terry. "Thank you for reporting on all parties who are impacted by this strike. As we know, there are at least 2 sides to every story, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. You do a great job trying to keep your audience focused on the truth." Well, that is our goal. Our little team here works hard every single day trying to bring you balanced coverage of issues that you care about, and we'll continue doing that day in and day out. Now, a big issue that we're constantly hearing about from you are concerns about the environment. Up next on the story, a seabird native to the Northwest is in crisis. Half its population died years ago and has not bounced back. How scientists are working to solve the mystery. That's when the story returns.
A seabird commonly found in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest is in a dire situation. 10 years ago, half the population died and still has not recovered. Meteorologist Leah Pizzetti with our Environment Northwest team shows us how scientists are trying to piece together what happened.
This is a mer bird. It looks like a penguin, except it can fly in the air and also travel underwater. These birds face an uncertain future.
Gut punch, heart-wrenching, right? You're wading through bodies.
That's how University of Washington professor and marine biologist Julia Parrish describes these images taken in Alaska in 2015.
The common mer is, or at least was, pretty common.
She and other researchers snapped these photos in the middle of a multi-year period where Pacific waters warmed about 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
A little bit of warming in the ocean means a lot of change.
The warming trend depleted the mer's food supply.
Those shifts underneath them changed their food landscape. So suddenly the things that they depended on to eat weren't there, or weren't there enough. And literally, the ocean was unable to provide for so many mers. They starved to death.
The heaviest concentration of these birds is in Alaska, but they do come as far south as Monterey, California. The Alaskan population was hit hardest by the heat wave. Before this, there were an estimated 8 million mers there. After the die-off, just half remained.
4 million mers lost their lives in the span of about 6 months. Wow.
Julia says this is the largest documented die-off of a warm-blooded animal in the world. And while that was 10 years ago, the second problem they now face is what's happened since then. Scientists hoped the population would recover once water temperatures leveled out.
But they didn't. They didn't get bigger. The population is no bigger now than it was just after the heat wave hit. There's been no recovery of this population. So common mers, once common in Alaska, are a lot less common.
Why haven't they been able to recover?
Big mystery, huge mystery. We don't know.
Julia tells me that this brings up an important question. Do you wait until a species is almost extinct to put them on the threatened or endangered list? Or is a negative trend like this reason enough to move forward? She also points out that this extreme die-off is a bit of an ominous warning. What if this happened to a species that is even more crucial to the food pyramid or our ecosystem or economy? For Environment Northwest, I'm meteorologist Leah Pizzetti.
Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. After that last story, you'll probably need a pick-me-up, and you can find that on The Good Stuff coming your way next. And if you haven't already, download the free KGW Plus app available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. That way, if you miss an episode of the story, you can go back and stream it on your own schedule. Now, we have an update to our Tainted Water series tomorrow night. I hope you'll join me then, right here at 6:30. Good night.